So, for those people who didn't see The Hunted last night, could you tell us all about it?
Yes, The Hunted was a programme we wanted to make because we wanted to find out what was happening in Russia since the anti-propaganda laws were passed last summer. Now, the fact that those laws were brought in unanimously, not one single MP voted against them, really makes a statement, we thought, about what general Russia thinks, because politicians would never go that far out on a limb. So we simply wanted to find out, had attacks increased since that law, what had been its effect, and to do that ahead of the Winter Olympics when we knew everyone would be watching.
Right, cool. How did you get involved in the actual project itself?
Well, some of it was luck. You see, I'd been following what was happening.
Right.
And I was thinking to myself, it reminded me of Section 28 over here. And I was a student when that was brought in. I remember, getting on the bus from Manchester and going down to London to have a little bit of a word, protest. And so I'd sort of clocked what was happening in Russia, but without any detailed knowledge about what was going on the ground. Anyway, I had left the BBC last year, and I had done a programme for Dispatches, and after that I was going in to talk to them about future projects, and I just sort of plucked it out of the air, saying, you really ought to do something about Russia. Now, by sheer good luck, they had also thought the same thing, and they'd spoken to a production company, Blakeway, in London, and they had hired the filmmaker Ben Steele, who's the guy who filmed yesterday and produced it. And so they said, right, yeah, you can work on it too. So it was partly that I'd asked, but it was also lucky that they were receptive.
Cool. Clearly, a lot of people are enraged by the programme last night and the events which are going on in Russia. What advice would you give them if they wanted to help in some way?
Well, I don't have detailed advice, actually. I know that Stonewall if you go to the Stonewall website, they've put up a briefing paper all about what's going on in Russia.
Right.
And they are also asking for donations if you're minded to do so. But the more general thing that I would say is that when we were in Russia, the gay people that we spoke to a person, said that they were really worried about what happened after the Olympic Games, because they saw that things that Putin was doing in the build-up, he let out the Pussy Riot prisoners, he let out Khodorkovsky, and it was seen as good PR from him. And everyone thinks that once the games are over, the world has moved on, they're going to be left. And they really do fear what might come next. And a huge fear is yet another law, one that specifically targets gay parents and takes their children into care. Now, I have no idea if that's going to happen, but people think it might happen.
Which is, outrageous, isn't it? Terrible. What was the hardest part of your personal involvement in the project?
I was really touched when I met Dima, who was the guy with the eye patch who'd been shot. I was amazed. He was only 25, but the sort of eloquence with which he spoke, and you could tell on his face he was still really shocked. I mean, this appalling thing had happened to him in the middle of a working day. He'd just gone for a tea party. He was about to head back to work, and suddenly he was having operations, and he had just heard that he'd lost the sight of his eye, that it couldn't come back. And yet he spoke with such sort of dignity and passion, and made that incredible point that, the way that homosexuality is talked about in public, especially by the church and politicians, he makes the connection between that and the people who picked up a weapon and injured him so much. And that's such an important thing. And I suppose, the thing that I was left with when I was sitting at the airport in Moscow about to head home is just how incredibly fortunate we are to live in this country at this time where there is so much equality. And, 20 years ago when I joined, more than that now, when I joined that march against Section 28 in London, you know, who would have thought that 25 years later there would be gay marriage, that would be being introduced? It's unbelievable how things have changed here. Really, when the law changes in that positive way, attitudes will still follow, because we all know a lot of people still have misgivings about the idea of gay marriage, but the fact is it's legal. And, you know, in Russia, the law is going the other way, and so it's really hard to see how it's going to improve.
It's just going worse, isn't it? Sorry. So what's next for you? Are you going to be doing any further work with LGBT, or even more work in Russia, or what's coming next?
Well, I mean, I would, you know, I'm freelance. I worked at the BBC for donkey's years, and I resigned last year after it was all the sort of fallout from the Savile scandal, because that was a story I wanted to do for Newsnight, and it got dropped, and the rest is pretty unpleasant history. So, I mean, I'm freelance, and I'm, you know, I've been very involved with this, and I'm just waiting to see now what comes next. I mean, I always like to follow up stories. I would like to follow this up in some way, and I will keep an eye on it. But, you know, other things that I do now, like media training, Stonewall have talked about doing media training for people in Russia or activists to help them sort of make the most of any kind of opportunities to communicate as they can. So that sort of work is something I'd also consider.
Super. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It was a fascinating watch last night. I absolutely loved it. And have a great day. I shall see you soon.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.